Hello and welcome to another Pup and Suds video of Homebrew DC20. Folks, today I have a module for you called the Citadel of Blight. It's for level 1 adventurers, and the entire mission is about rescuing dragons. Alright. You've been chosen amongst the worthiest of your kin. To each of you was entrusted the last of the dragon eggs. And although you are novice adventurers, a great destiny has been laid upon your shoulders. The bond between you and your hatchlings was foretold to be the stuff of legends, a tale that would be sung for ages to come. Yet on the day the eggs were to awaken and the prophecy fulfilled, disaster struck. The eggs were stolen, snatched away in the dead of night. Now you find yourselves in pursuit of a shadowed figure, racing against time to reclaim what was taken. For the fate of the dragons, and perhaps the world, rests in your hand. Alright, so this module is loosely based off some 5th edition modules that I ran, but I've heavily modified it. In the white blocks of this module, you'll see some of my homebrew lore for the land of Mundi, which is my entire world setting. And this took place for my campaign in the year 960 after some events that occurred. So, the year 960, the lands of Mundi lie in shadow in their former glory. The once proud elven realm of Delulu flourished, and the skies alight with dragons of their noble riders. In these tenuous times, when hope is but a flicker, whispers arise from the eastern woodlands. The spirit of the forest, forgotten by most, has spoken to a faithful few, a promise that the young and untested shall reclaim the lost glories of Delulu, and in their quest rebuild a bond with dragons. And so you can build up this world here where there was a former dragon riding Valerian style elven land, and the players are trying to re-bring that back. But just when they were entrusted with the dragon eggs, they were stolen. And so a rescue mission starts off. So they're going to actually try to rescue these dragons. In part 1, they're going to be ambushed on the old road on their way towards Oakhertz. As they go further north, they're going to end up in a quarry called Woodburn Quarry. They're going to learn about this ancient underground city. It's held up by the dark wood roots. They're going to find kobolds and goblins, and they're going to pass the lower chambers. Now, I'm going to skip to the very end of the entire thing because I want to show you guys that at the end here, I have a series of monster stat blocks. And I know DC20 doesn't have a lot of these, so I want to talk through these first, and then we can go talk about the adventure a little bit more. So, monster stat blocks. I have a pack of kobolds here. From minions at the very top left to thugs, which are a little bit stronger than minions, but also have a different vibe to them. The trappers, if you actually use these rivals or ruffians, they're about 1-to-1 with a level 1 player, so they should be a 1-to-1 match. The dragon guards, which are a little bit stronger now, the lieutenants type monster, a little bit stronger now than the other types, and then the boss, the sorceress. And so you'll see this, it goes from minion to boss for each of these blocks that I have laid out here. And so you may throw 4 minions at a player, but they each have 1 hit point and they only have 2 actions, so not a lot. You can see it grows a little bit. And I have given these monsters some stamina, and I've given them some higher actions as well, like round actions and apex actions when they become bosses. So it should be really fun to run these guys as a clan. You could run pieces of them for your own adventures and take the stat blocks as you want. But here are some Kobold stat blocks. Alright, I want to roll the next stat blocks for goblins. I have some goblin rushers. I took some of the orc style features like rushing and finishing blow because it feels like goblins to me are just orclings, small orcs, and overall this whole group of them are rushers, archers. There's the chief, which is the rival to the players, and then there's the shaman, loosely based off Warcraft 3's shaman, and then you have the hobgoblin commander, which is a little bit based off the commander class but gets a couple extra round maneuvers like commanding the goblins to be in a shield wall, or focusing the fire, or doing a group charge. So you could have this army leader here of goblins and a hobgoblin leader commanding the rest of them. Could be really fun to run this in your own campaign as well, but all of this melds together in the module here. And finally, I have blights. twig blights, vine blights. I've invented some new ones because I needed more blights. So there's a flower blight, there's a branch blight, and then there's a tree blight. Basically, the tree blight is an evil, might-based druid who's summoning his domain every day, and so around him is 15 spaces of a domain, and in that domain he has full control of his spells, but also he can summon more blights over time. So as the fight goes on, there's actually more blights emerging when you're fighting this tree blight. That's the boss, and there's obviously the branch blight lieutenant. Man, that's a hard word. You gotta say it 3 times fast. But they got some cool brutish moves. They're big guys. The flower blights sort of attract you in, stun you, put you to sleep. And then the vine blights and the twig blights are these classic fantasy adventures where, in this case, because of DC20, you can do a lot more with them. The vine blights can entangle you, pull you in, grapple you, do things like that. So they're very grappling focused overall. And the twig blights are just minor, minions that are going to be thrown at you for cannon fodder, and gives the AoE caster something really fun to use. The awesome thing about the blights is they're all vulnerable to fire damage and slashing damage. Think about chopping a tree down or just burning it, right? But because they're made of wood, they're resistant to lightning damage. So it's one of those things that if your players are really enjoying knowledge checks, you can use this and give this to them for their advantages. Alright. I've given you guys a little bit of this. This module is available on my Google Drive, linked in the description of this video. I would like to walk through some of the other pieces of the module, tell a story overall, and see how you guys like it. I'm still looking for feedback. I'm still going to modify it, but I really want to hear back from the community here. So the beginning of this module is just a quick synopsis. I've tried to follow Brandon Sanderson's rules for plot making. So there's a promise of how the tone of the adventure, there's progression, and then there's a payoff of what you're going to give to your players at the end. The first part is getting through this trail past Oakhertz to what's called Woodburn Quarry. When you arrive at the quarry, you're going to dive down, see a giant city deep, held up by roots in the quarry. This city is a dungeon full of kobolds and goblins and other monsters that might be around. Then you're going to get to the bottom of the city, and that's where the blighted tree lives, with its various blights spread across. Throughout this entire dungeon, you'll actually know that I've created this world of ancient elven wars, and so there's some elven skeletons roaming around every once in a while that you have to deal with. Okay, so that's there. And as we move on here, the module, you're going to basically start from the top here. You can read through the green blocks when you're presenting this to your players. And then the other blocks are for you to read and understand as a DM or as a game master. At the very end, they're going to be awarded a Dragon Familiar. It's sort of like the Find Familiar spell, but your familiars can take traits from Dragonborn ancestry, so they can have a breath weapon, for example. And then there's a couple more mysteries that they may uncover that I foreshadow my next module. So I'll keep coming out with these modules so that you guys can build on a campaign and take ideas from it, or run the campaign that I ran and have fun with that as well. Alright, so the first part is the trail to Woodburn. You're going to start off with a travel skill challenge, have the players tell you how they're traveling, and run a couple of skill challenge points. If they are successful, they actually know that the lands in between the cities are very dangerous, and that they need to basically be on alert. Only traders and merchants protected by the king travel on these roads. So that gives them the ability to not be surprised and actually surprise the creature that they're about to see in the next section. So it's an ambush! You're going to be ambushed by twig blights and vine blights, and basically this entire section is connected from the previous one. You can run it like a normal combat if you want to do that with your players. But if you want to get to the main story, this is just a little bit of a tease. So you can just run it as a combat challenge, and they have to get a ton of points. So basically, say you have 4 PCs, they need 16 points out of all this, but they're going to get 3 checks to do it. So do the math, some of them need to succeed really well to be able to do this. But let's see. They're going to get a knowledge check, and they're going to get some offensive checks as well. So from their knowledge checks, it would be a DC10 nature check. They can uncover a couple things. These are minions, so any form of AoE is going to do doubled points. So if you use an AoE spell of some sort or do a sweeping attack maneuver, you get double points for hitting. Lurkers, they like to masquerade in the common bushes, so you just get a point for knowing that. Fire vulnerability, if you do fire damage, you'll get double points. Slashing vulnerability, you get double points for you slashing damage, and lightning, any form of lightning damage will actually earn you no points, so that teaches them about the mechanics of the monster. And finally, you might find these forbidden fruit hanging on the bushes. If you consume this, they have to pass this nature check to know this, by the way. It'll be a DC10 fate roll, which is roughly a 50-50 chance. If you succeed, you basically get an 8-hour long rest from the fruit. If you fail, or if you succeed by 5, you can even summon a twig blight yourself. And if you fail, you're poisoned, so be careful of that. You also would learn that someone has been camping in this skull. This is a skull of a giant from an ancient war with elves and giants and dragons, but the skull is here, and you're going to find that the players are uncovering in the skull a campsite of someone who was just there, and it's none other than the person that has their dragon. So, overall, we're going to walk through this, talk to you guys through Oakhertz is their next section. So you're going to notice a small dried fruit on the bushes. That's going to lead you further on, and you're going to start to now pick up and find these tracks again. While the wagon tracks have been washed up by the rain at the beginning of this adventure, now you're leading you here to Oakhertz. So you're going to get to this town. I've got a couple of notes on the town, but it's pretty light. If you want to do more in Oakhertz, there's a ton more you can do in terms of developing the town. The biggest and most important stuff is this man named Jebediah. You want to introduce him like he's been a friend and a long-lost friend. They've loved Jebediah their whole lives, that type of thing. He's been good to them. And then here, they're going to start to discover that maybe Jebediah was the one who took their dragons and start to feel betrayed and want to get him for that. So these are the important notes they have to really learn to move on from Oakhertz. But a couple other things. There's an apple pie recipe they could eat, which is sort of an improved version of the forbidden fruit. It could still make them poisoned, but could give them 5 temporary hit points if they're good at it. Otherwise, you can just get regular food from the inn. You can get some information from the innkeeper, rumors around town, that type of thing. So have some fun with it at the Appleby Inn. If you want to give them a different apple-named inn, let the players make those decisions. I love letting players make up the inn names because they love the inns and they remember it way more than. All right. There's also a small temple in the town, slightly important because you'll have a chance to. The players will have a chance to save Hixim Copplespring, who is the husband of the priestess. But the priestess will also give you, herbalism, things that you might need for your adventure before you go. Obviously, there's other businesses around, smiths, tanners. You can buy mounts even, but mounts are expensive. Just keep that in mind. And there's guards and there's debt collectors and whatnot around. So you can build up a town, have them have fun in town if they want to over the day. There's not a rush necessarily because they may have found out that they're just a little bit behind the other guy that they've been looking for. All right. So as they get off from the town, after they need their long rest, they're going to go down the tracks. They're going to get to this quarry, a giant canyon dug deep by the miners. They're going to have to do a skill challenge to go down to the quarry. They may fall, they may take damage. We'll find out. But once they get into the quarry, now we're starting to get into a dungeon. So they're going to have to march through this. The way I've organized it is I've tried to go in the order you'd probably go in for these different aspects. So you start off in this courtyard, you go into a tower, the entry tower here, and then I'll put like south of the entry tower, north of the entry tower, so you have some guide. But remember, at the very end of the module is the full remastered maps of this adventure, taken from Reddit. So someone on Reddit's done a great job remastering these, but this is the whole dungeon if you want to run it just from a full dungeon. I prefer to skip around and get to the highlights that the players might want. Alright, so in this dungeon, they're going to get through here. They're going to find there's a secret area at the bottom here which has some dragon shrine. A lot of this is just foreshadow for the next module, but could give them a heads up for some stuff that's coming. Then they're going to find a den of dragonlings. I call kobolds dragonlings in my world. And so the dragonlings are, they're going to meet this guy named Mobu. He's a kobold trapper. He wants to become a dragon guard, and he's really just trying to rescue a dragon that he uncovered, which is your dragons that you're looking for. And he's going to tell you about this dragon he almost saved, but the goblins took them away from him. And so at the end, you're going to maybe help Mobu come down to the Dragonling colony and talk to the queen, Daenerys, of the Dragonlings. She's a sorceress. She's very powerful. She actually has a dragon key above her head that leads to that previous chamber that's the dragon's door. So she might give you that as a reward for helping out Mobu and saving the dragons, because Dragonlings, more than anything else, just worship dragons and love them. On top of that, there might be some kobolds she's trying to have you rescue, and that's something you might do with her. But it's a little town you can also get some resources on if you don't end up fighting all of them, or maybe the players are murder hobos and they want to kill every kobold in this whole town. They could do that. So that's there. There's a bunch of resources. I try to put the treasures here as well. But if they get help from the kobolds, they exit pretty easily. If they don't get help, they have to run through a bunch of kobold traps. So run a quick challenge here to see what happens there. All right. As they move on, there's these fountains that they would start to move towards, and these fountains are another series of ancient elven traps, but they may get a bunch of rewards in the fountains if they're lucky enough. So let them roll skill challenge to march through these fountains. That leads them into the Goblin area, where they find Hixim Copplespring entrapped by the Goblins. They find some other kobolds that are entrapped as well. They want to rescue those kobolds and bring them back to the Kobold clan, and they want to rescue Hixim and take them back to Oakhertz. They'll open the cage, maybe, hopefully. But no matter what, this is the most important part. There is a dragon hidden in these rooms. It's one of the dragons that they need and they've been trying to rescue. So you can give them an early dragon if they come to this area and save the dragon. If they don't, just move this dragon to the end of the campaign and they rescue them there. That's basically it. But there's goblins everywhere, so you could have to deal with goblin minions, a hobgoblin leader. The goblins have lots of treasure lying around because they just got paid off by Jebediah, the evil villain who stole all the dragons, and they're sort of his protector, and they have their own sort of motivations that I've put on here. But should be fun to run overall. They're led by this hobgoblin leader. They have a shaman with them, but no matter what, they're trying to come, maybe raid more and whatnot as they come out of this. So you're gonna end up taking them here in this top left corner. There's a hole. That's the next level deep. So they have to get to this hole to get to the next level deep. If you want to, you can put a lurking vine blight that'll just grab them and pull them into the hole if you really need to push your players along. But otherwise, they could jump in on their own accord, thus landing in the Blighted Tree area. As they land in this area, they might actually have to fight those vine blights in the first region. Dealing with them is somewhat problematic, but they should be able to deal with them pretty easily. It's only 4 of them. Then they're going to go further and further south. If they end up going to the southern region, they would find this little lab, and they see a lot more information about what's coming in the fight. If they just go eastward and northward, they'll pass this aromatic pass. And so there's these flowers strewn about all across. These are actually creatures. They draw them in, they stun them, and they effectively suck on their blood to gain health and feed the Blighted Tree. This whole area is difficult terrain, so let them make sure that you account for that. But there's a small area that's a shrine. So up here in the top left area is a little dragon shrine. That shrine area is got all these basically dragon atonements. If the players steal anything from this area, there's lurking in the shadows a shadowborn revenant, an undead person hanging out in the shadows. There's a foreshadow note here that he might be important in future modules, so keep him alive. But he's just there to stop them from stealing, and that's all he cares about, and he will scare them away more than anything else. I don't have a stat block for a revenant yet. I'm working on that, but in the next revision of the module, I'll probably release that. All right. Finally, then there's you can make some religion checks to learn a little bit more, and then you get to the last part of the whole session. It comes down to here. You end up twigs and roots piled on the floor of the sagging chamber. A collapsed southern wall opens into a vast cavern. Luminous fungus surround the walls, and the high roof loom over the twilight grove of sickly briars, bushes, and saplings, and other woody plants. Ruined walls and hollow towers protrude from the briars. The walls are about 20 feet high, which is less than half the height of the cavern ceiling. The thicket extends 75 feet, centered around an evil tree. Its blackened, twisted limbs reach upward, like a skeletal hand clawing its way out of the earth. The wooden knots almost form a face looking down upon Jeb, hooded with a knife in his hand. Below the tree, you see the cages, each with one of your dragons. Stab! Jeb plunges the knife through the cage, and the dragon starts to bleed, dripping its blood into the tree. And so you can now read about, make that really, really emotional there. Make it really tragic for your players. They should feel yearn to go get and save their dragons. This encounter setup has Jeb, a bunch of tree blights, the tree blight, a bunch of branch blights. Put the flowers spread every 10 spaces, so kind of spread them out throughout your dungeon. And then have the twig blights as well. A bunch of twig blights forming a wall to protect the domain. As you go each round, more blights will emerge. Jeb will spend all his AP to stab another dragon. So in 3 rounds, all 3 dragons are stabbed. They only have a little bit of hit points each, so they're going to start going down. It's a little bit of flavor on your end how you want to deal with that. I would say they each have 2 hit points, and you're dealing with that, and kind of like a wild form. But overall, that's going to be your flavor there of how they're going to die and if they're going to save them in time. They got to lockpick the cages, pull them out, defeat the blights, and defeat the overall big tree blight. If they succeed, they're going to get a dragon familiar. They're going to get some treasure from that, but the dragon familiar is what they're really after. It's a special find familiar spell that has dragonborn ancestry traits. So it could be super fun to have those little dragons, have little pets. Call them Pokemon, call them whatever you want, but this is what my players wanted in their first session. They said, we want pet dragons, and this is the way they had to rescue them. So it was a really awesome session. I enjoyed it a ton when I played it with my group. You could rush this all in a couple of hours, probably 5 hours, if you're really prepared. But I recommend maybe splitting it up into 2 sessions if you really want to lean into the towns and lean into the roleplay. In the aftermath, you have them come back to Oakhertz. Maybe they go back to that Dragon's Door area, and basically they can talk to the Kobold clan, talk to the Goblin clan, they can make friends, they can make enemies, whatever you want. And then they'll be back in Oakhertz for the next adventure. That's where the next one takes place. They come back, talk to the mayor, help the farmers, that type of thing. So it's generally aligned for good aligned players. If you have more neutrally or evil aligned players, you'll have to readjust the motivations here, but I'm sure you could do it as a good GM. That's what I have for you here today, folks. Monsters, some modules, and overall some maps that you can run for a level 1 run through. Thank you so much for listening. I am homebrewing DC20 here. My name is Pup and Suds, and I hope to make a lot more videos to come. Have a great day.